Okay, guys, we're live. It is about 2:47, so we're a little bit early. If you want to jump ahead to probably about the 15-minute mark, that's about when the show is going to start. So that's when we'll start to get into class. So we're just going to be kicking it, talking, just kind of BSing until then. Welcome to join us.
And I'll be messing around with my camera trying to get it to work.
I just got done interviewing um, Melissa McAtee,
Yeah, what's she all about?
Pfizer whistleblower.
Hmm. What level was she at with Pfizer?
She was just she was on the line, the production line. She started seeing all kinds of inconsistencies and stuff. So, but anyway, she blew the whistle. She was on Project Veritas. Um, so so Project Veritas vetted her.
Well, that's usually a pretty good sign.
Hmm. I don't see. How many people did you guys have last week?
Oh, usual 30 or so.
Okay, good.
Did you get everything done?
I did. Yes. Yeah. It was actually a lot of fun. I had a really good time over there. Um, but they they didn't know, like there was like the right hand didn't talk to the left, so they didn't know what was going on when we got over there. The guy who's running the show, um, he was gone because his daughter was getting like a kidney transplant or liver transplant or something. So anyway, some sort of a medical procedure. I don't remember, but we ended up when we got over there. The regular guys were like, we didn't even know you were coming. So they had to completely rearrange their entire data to fit us in. So, but it all worked out.
Cool.
It all worked out. Uh, I don't see. Let's see. Mm-mm. Oh man. Oh, well.
You mentioned to me you have a extra laptop sitting around,
Uh huh. A
Windows
couple.
based.
I have a couple of them actually.
I need to talk to you about that offline.
Okay.
I can't have this happen. This is not enough reliability. It's the same problem that happened last time, and I don't have the fix. I'm working on it though.
So I have a theory. I don't even know how much I can say. I have a theory on what happened up in San Francisco.
We'll go right ahead.
Um, so I tend to think, um, I tend to think that the hello, Monica. I think that guy, I'm going to use very loose terms to stay into the algorithm type thing, right? So I think that the guy the guy from across the bay who did not live there was there for a purpose, was there for a sexual encounter that he would have ultimately received monetary compensation for. I think that the owner of the house knew this, and that people in very high positions knew this was going to happen, and set up all these websites and all this other stuff to make it look like that the guy, the prostitute, was going to get was somebody that he wasn't. And when he figured out that he was going to be made a patsy in a situation, he lost his shit. And that's when he hit Pelosi with the hammer. He was like, what the hell? Because the glass that was broken was on the outside. It wasn't on the inside. There was no break-in.
Well, so, I got a bit of news for you that you probably haven't seen yet because it just came across my screen about 10 minutes ago. You know, after this guy gave this wonderfully articulate confession to the FBI yesterday, he's just pled not guilty.
To what?
To all of it. He's basically, after his confession yesterday, now he's pleading not guilty.
Well, who did he plead to the guilt? Did he plead to the FBI or did he plead to?
This is in court. His first court appearance. He came in.
Oh, so Raging Smirk just said, "Did you see that this guy was on the camera crew at the January 6th event?" Huh?
That's I believe that's been debunked.
Okay.
I believe that is not the case. I saw that same meme over the weekend, and some people shot it down pretty good over on Twitter.
Okay.
And I'm not seeing that comment from Raging Smirk, which means that my YouTube is messing up again. I love technology. Yeah, let me read this to you. Breaking: David DePape pleads not guilty to all charges in Paul Pelosi incident. In his first court appearance, he is not shackled, and his arm is in a sling.
In a sling?
Yep. Well, he got tackled. And they said he was in the hospital, so yeah, probably broke his arm or shoulder.
Huh.
He'll be back in court on Friday. Public defender Adam Lipson spoke to the press after the hearing, and they just met each other last night in a briefing. So they basically, the FBI questioned him without counsel. Is that going to be okay? And his lawyer says DePape has a vulnerability to misinformation. They're still trying to paint him as a QAnon guy.
You can't say that on YouTube.
You can say it in a derogatory manner, which is how they're using it. So, question: if he gave his confession to the FBI without a lawyer present, what does that tell us?
Well, I don't trust the FBI. I saw the affidavit given by the special agent.
Yeah, that's the one. That's his alleged confession.
Well, no, that wasn't he gave his confession, but he didn't give his confession to FBI. He gave his confession to San Francisco PD, allegedly.
Well, what the FBI reported, it was different than what the PD had reported. So the story has changed from being 3 people there or someone else opening the door.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of unanswered questions. How did he get there? How did he get past security? Glass broken from the inside or the outside? Whose hammer was it? If Pelosi opened the door, why did he then go back and engage with? If he was worried for his life, why did he go back and engage? There's so much of this stuff that doesn't add up, and it could be solved so easily if we could just see the security footage, which we'll never see.
Correct.
but we're conspiracy theorists for questioning the official narrative. And then, of course, did you see the footage of his house where he lives, whatever?
Yep.
It's at Black Lives Matter signs everywhere, all kinds of stuff. So the media's instant attribution of him as a Trump supporter appears to be in doubt. I think that's a fair statement.
Yes. Yeah, something like that. So, again, I tend to think that when you look at the websites and everything that were created under his name, it's not difficult to go in and sign up, create a register a domain under somebody's name as long as you have their address. That's easy to do. The websites that allegedly that he was posting the material that they said he was, that
Yeah, the timing on that's all very queer.
very, very, they that it was like it only showed up like 48 hours prior to, and then it was gone. And there was one WordPress website and one or a WordPress blog site,
Yep.
and then something else, and it just like, I mean, it was there and then it was gone. So
Yeah, and they were recently created, but they had blogs going back quite some time, which and now it's gone. And then the same thing with the social media,
yeah,
which got scrubbed really fast.
but so you can see if you have a WordPress site, you can go back and you can create a document or a page or a post and predate it. You can predate it going back 3 or 4. We can go back a year or two. So that's not difficult in WordPress. That doesn't mean that that's when it got posted. That just means that was the date that you assigned to it.
I'm going to respond to Doug.
Did he just say something to you?
Yeah, I was looking for the link because he's not able to check his emails like I am.
Dude, I send it to every single email address.
I saw that too. You did send it to multiple email addresses. Anyways, all right, we won't give him a hard time. Hey, I just got another little bit of news came through the. This is a good one to share. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court agrees with us. This is the GOP and the Pennsylvania GOP that incorrectly or undated mail ballots cannot be counted in next week's election. Republicans went to court, and now Democrats have to follow the law. That's a pretty big deal. Because that was not the case in 2020. And that's the same Supreme Court in Pennsylvania that's that they're elected, and it's definitely a leftist court. Mm-hmm. Hey, Doug.
Yeah, let me make sure there we go. Speak again.
Again.
There we go. Yeah, and for some reason it wasn't coming through my earphones. Yeah, after I sent the text to you about the link, then I went over to my spam, and you had to send 2 of them, but they both wound up my spam for some reason. So be it. So apparently you're dangerous, Ron.
Well, you might be. You know the email messing that all the servers, especially Google, is doing for anything conservative is off the roof. There's lawsuits on it already. We've got the proof of this one. Even Ronna McDaniel filed suit on that last week.
Well, before we get started here with questions, then let me let you know of one that just happened to me. That's not online, though, but it's very interesting. So Friday night, I am slated to speak in the desert. I won't get into exactly who it is, or I won't get details just yet. But the woman who scheduled me to speak calls me up this morning. She says, we've been canceled. the event's canceled. I said, well, what's going on? She says, well, two things. First of all, the purpose of the event is to honor women in the military and wives of husbands in the military. And they have like people who are nominated, and they give certificates of appreciation or something like that. It's a dinner once a year to show appreciation to women who are involved in the military, be it those serving or the wives. And I was scheduled to be the speaker this year. And every year that the event does this, they have Camp Pendleton, the honor guard from Camp Pendleton there, and they have the highest ranking, I guess, enlisted guy. And after looking me up and deciding who I am, the military canceled the honor guard, said they will not be at the event, and that the staff sergeant can show up, but he may not indicate at any point that he is in the military, that he's a staff sergeant, and he may not be in uniform because of me being the speaker. Now,
why?
I'd like to think it was just because I'm so charming, but apparently that isn't the reason. Because our military is woke. That's why. And most of the audience comes from the base, so once word gets out, you're not going to have enough people. The woman also, the organizer also, coincidentally, got really sick this week too, and she wouldn't be able to do the event anyway because she's so sick. And she's like the everything of the event. She runs it, whatever. So she decided she's going to cancel the event, hold it again next year, but this time we're going to focus on a civilian audience, get a color guard from a private group or private school or high school or OTC, something like that. It's not going to be military because apparently I'm just too damn dangerous. I'm just too radical, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's not just online. We're getting hit in all places. Now that said, I've been complaining for years that the Southern Poverty Law Center has not designated me as a domestic terrorist yet. I have a friend that is, and I've been complaining. What do I got to do to get on that list? But
No, I'm sure we're on a bunch of lists now. The DHS is, I just assume I've checked all the boxes with them. Of course, boy, I tell you, that lawsuit, that Missouri versus United States is really, and that was it the Intercept article from yesterday?
I saw the headline. I have not read it yet.
Yeah, this kind of implicates basically just about every aspect of the government of conspiring with big business to take away our First Amendment rights. And
right.
In other words, it basically exposes the textbook definition of fascism. And it sounds like this judge isn't having any of it. Like I said, that language he put in the ruling last week for the expedited depositions.
Right.
Yeah, they're trying to hide the one guy. The government tried to file today to say the one guy that works for CISA could not appear, but I don't think that's going to happen either. They're trying to say he's too busy with his work to take a day off for a deposition. I'm sure nobody's ever tried that excuse before.
Wow. Well, we live in interesting times, and actually, like I was telling my class this morning, because this same type of discussions were going on, and I told them, it's a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times.
It's also a Chinese blessing. I've been using that quote probably since I was about 15. I love that one. So, audience, we are here for Q&A. So we are, here to answer your questions on the Constitution and related events.
Well, it's funny because Ageless Nerd says, Doug, I believe that a local VFW would be more than happy to send their color guard. That's one of the possibilities. I'm already in touch. In fact, tomorrow I'm speaking to an American Legion group. It's not a VFW, it's a different group, but a lot of these guys are also veterans from foreign war. But American Legion group in Rancho Cucamonga tomorrow. And they're real happy to have me. So...
Hey, whatever happened to that woodshop teacher guy up in Canada, the one that was wearing like the prosthetic chest?
You're not familiar with this story.
Oh, come on.
You're gonna have to give a little more detail. That one didn't spark anything in my brain either.
Okay, so I'm doing a search, doing a web search. I'll share.
Apparently,
this.
Storm Chaser is chasing storms in places that are different than where you and I are looking.
Well, let me jump in there while Ron's trying to track down what he's looking for.
No, I'll share this. This one right here. The woodshop teacher from Canada, the one that was wearing the.
Oh, that one. Yeah. As far as I know, he has been fired. Oh, you said chest. Okay. I didn't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't think he's been fired yet, and a lot of people think he's basically trolling to try to get fired.
Oh, I think he is. Well, my understanding is the guy was a conservative, and he was doing that literally as a tactic to show how absurd it was.
And they're trying not to fire him. We'll see. On a more constitutional note, yesterday was a real big Supreme Court hearing. On the table was University of North Carolina and Harvard trying to defend their affirmative action admissions policies.
Yeah, I think we're getting ready to see affirmative action die.
Well, it's going to be a big step towards it. If you listen to the justices. Now, interestingly, Roberts has long been opposed to affirmative action, which means he is probably going to write the decision because he'll be in the majority, which is too bad because I would really like to see Clarence Thomas write that one. Because also on the table, and this was discussed in the hearings, was due process. And now we're talking 14th Amendment. So if they're going to go, I mean, that's the direction we want this Supreme Court.
Action is 14th Amendment because it violates the Equal Protection Clause.
Yeah, and that's what they're talking about to some degree. And it's a pretty easy constitutional case to make on that. But if the arguments delve into incorporation, that's going to, I just want to see it mentioned in this case because this is not the case to deal with incorporation. But I want to get a feel for the temperature of the water on that, and I think it could happen.
I saw you had a text earlier saying that this could draw incorporation, and what he's talking about for the audience, because they may not all necessarily know what we're talking about, incorporation theory, and this isn't a subject that comes up a lot because people we've been taught such junk that we believe things that aren't true. In fact, last Thursday night, we encountered quite a discussion regarding this, and I'll be honest with you, when it's an ally, it's harder to discuss it because I'm not in a debate. I'm trying to get them to understand. But basically, what the idea is the Constitution of the United States. If you read the Bill of Rights, or you read about the Bill of Rights, you realize first of all that prior to the Bill of Rights being proposed, and after it was proposed, before it was ratified into law, there was written a preamble to the Bill of Rights that went along with it, that went out to the states. And the preamble says that the purpose of the Bill of Rights is to prevent the misconstruction or abuse of its powers. In other words, and even the most leftist crazy historians will agree with me on this, that originally the Bill of Rights only applied to the federal government. The idea is, and it's not, and now, see, the problem is people get messed up right there. The Bill of Rights does not guarantee your rights, does not protect your rights. It does not do anything to your rights at all, and in fact, all it does is tell Congress, essentially, and the federal government, hands off. That's all the Bill of Rights really does, or at least with the first few amendments, and then there's other variations. The Bill of Rights was not about the states, it was about the federal government. That does not mean that means the floodgates are open for the states to jump all over your rights. The idea is the language used, the authorities, because the states' approach to your rights and the federal government's approach to your rights are going to be different. Federal government has no business regarding your rights whatsoever. It was designed, it was created for external issues and issues between the states, essentially, things that have to do with the union. The states, however, handle internal issues. And your rights is an internal issue because you're part of your state, you're within your state. And sometimes some rights have some laws that need to be made necessarily regarding those rights. Federal government has no authority to make any laws regarding your rights. But the states do. But then problem is, you get a state like California that takes that and runs with it. It goes too far, and then everybody wants to scream to the federal government, hey, help us out. No, I don't want the federal government helping us out, and neither did the Founding Fathers, and it was never intended. That's between us and our state. So, and I'm saying this to help kind of set up what we're getting ready to talk about, and I apologize, I kind of stole the baton here, but I really want to make sure that the audience understands this. So in the 14th Amendment, the Due Process Clause, the Equal Protection Clause, and the Privileges and Immunities Clause are all believed to say that the rights also must be applied to the states as they are written. No, I'm sorry, not the rights, the Bill of Rights, as it is written. And in the final section of 14th Amendment says that Congress shall have the power to enforce this with appropriate legislation. So then they add to it that the federal government can enforce the Bill of Rights against the states. There's nothing that was originally intended that would go along with that. And if you read the congressional record, this was a huge debate on whether or not Bingham's idea, Bingham was the one that wrote these clauses, that incorporation ought to be a part of it. Incorporation meaning incorporating the Bill of Rights to the states as written. And so what wound up happening is, with this big debate, is while the 14th Amendment was approved, the idea that its language would incorporate the Bill of Rights to the states was not. And so now what has happened since then is the courts have incorporated the Bill of Rights to the states. And I'm going to give you an example. It's one of my favorite examples to give. Is McDonald v. Chicago, which was the case in which Chicago had decided to outlaw handguns in the city. And there was a lawsuit, got all the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said you cannot outlaw handguns because of incorporation of the Bill of Rights, Second Amendment. Now, while the court was correct in the sense that the city and the state should not be infringing on our right to keep and bear arms, it's not for the federal courts to be enforcing that or determining that, because it's not a federal issue. People got a hold of me when the courts decided that Chicago couldn't do that, and said, hey, Doug, it's a win for gun rights. And I said, no, don't be so sure of that. Do you really want the federal courts dictating to a state or a city what it can or can't do regarding your gun rights? It's a local issue. And so you want it taken care of locally. And so, well, what if they're doing the wrong thing? Don't let them. Fix it. Well, and I know here in California especially, that's a tough row to hoe. Because, I mean, we feel like we're up against, a complete Leviathan that cannot be defeated. It can be defeated. So now, get you back now to Warhamster. And I know there's been a couple questions popped up in the chat room. One from Citizen 1776, one from Lisa. We'll get to you guys. I definitely want to answer those questions. And Lisa, yours in particular is going to be a pretty good discussion as well. But now that I've set the table on what incorporation is, now I want to hand it back to Warhamster so that he can continue on with what he was going to say.
Well, yeah, really, incorporation it's such a big deal, but I've been working towards the federal government's not going to fix itself. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to be a top-down solution. And what they really did, going back through Hamilton, Marshall, and Joe Story, and all the people we complain about in the 19th century, what they did is that the federal government has basically assumed an awful lot of the powers that rightly belong to the states that were left to them, via the 10th Amendment. If we can get the Supreme Court to address incorporation and just get one state governor to have this conversation, say, look, Congress has no business, doing what they're doing. We reject it. Now you start getting to a push of what we want is, let's have a national conversation with a constitutional crisis. But states asserting their rights is the best, most peaceful solution to a tyrannical government. And they have the power. It is still written in the Constitution, all these things. We just need to get a few states start recognizing it, get the rest of the country to start having the conversation. And this is the right Supreme Court to take it to, which segues into Lisa's question. What are our thoughts on judicial review?
Before we get there, I'd like to backtrack real quick because it'll only take me 2 minutes.
Go.
To Citizen 1776, what congressional committees are legal and which aren't. The better way to answer that is not which ones are legal, which are not, but what is a congressional committee supposed to be? Congressional committee is supposed to be directly related to the legislative process. If it is not directly related to the legislative process, then it is an unnecessary and unconstitutional congressional committee. Now, while Congress and while the houses can make their own rules, they're not really supposed to be delving into things that are outside their authorities. And if the committee becomes something that's like a judicial hearing, let's say, like a particular one that's been going on lately, that has nothing to do with the legislative process. It has nothing to do with gathering information for legislation or whatever. Now, all the committees, even if it's outside an authority, is okay if the purpose of the committee is regarding the legislation. In other words, they have a judicial committee. Well, the legislative branch really doesn't have any judicial authorities. However, they might want to, with that judicial committee, take a look at the judicial impact that a piece of legislation might have. So that, therefore, the judicial committee is okay. See what I'm saying? So as long as it's directly related to the legislation at hand, then it's fine. Okay.
Yeah, and that was the egregious part, and it's really, I think, really started to steamroll with the Kennedy investigation, the Warren Commission, and the Congress had no business or heading up the Warren Commission. That should have been left up to the judicial branch, who's the law enforcement and the executive.
Yeah,
but
and the executive with the DOJ, Department of Justice, can do investigating, but it's a prosecutory part of the executive branch. So that's a different discussion for a different time. Okay, let's get to Lisa's question because this is huge.
Well, judicial review. The reason I said that we were talking about the 14th Amendment, why it matters is because if we were going to have a challenge, we're going to rely on a Supreme Court to make a ruling about constitutionality of something. And although we're going to be pleased with the result, we're not necessarily happy with having to rely on that. And I'd much prefer to see the states assert their sovereignty themselves, as it should be done.
When it comes to judicial review, without going into the history, Lisa knew enough to ask this question, so I'm guessing she's familiar with the birth of judicial review from Marbury versus Madison, 1803, and really even beforehand. I mean, it was a thought before that, but it basically got codified with Marbury versus Madison. And the way I like to explain it, or the way I explained it to a gentleman who I respected greatly, even though we were disagreeing on this, was this. We have and for those of you who don't know, judicial review is the idea that the judicial branch, federal courts, that the court system judges may, in addition to applying the law to the cases they hear, review the law to determine whether or not it is constitutional or not, or just or not, or whatever, and strike it down or adjust it if it does not meet constitutional muster. There's no authority in Article 3 of the Constitution or the Constitution at all for that. But to get back with what I was going to say earlier, so when I was talking to this gentleman who I greatly respect, Dr. Larry Yarn, the dean of Hillsdale College, who actually supports the idea of judicial review, and I asked him, had him on my radio show years ago, it was at least 8 years ago, and I said this to him: so, are we in agreement that the Constitution, when it comes to the federal government, creates a limited government with limited authorities? He agreed, yes. So, okay. So, if the courts are indeed tasked with determining whether or not a law, especially a federal law, is constitutional or not, and they can strike it down if they feel it is not, is that not a case of the federal government deciding for itself what its own authorities are? And how is that limited government? It was one of 2 times during that interview that I received dead air from the other side. He didn't know how to respond. You can't have it both ways. Either we have a limited government or we don't. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have unlimited government, then we're a tyranny. If we do, then judicial review is completely unconstitutional, and there's no place it is authorized within the pages of the Constitution. And then I get well, Doug, that's just the way it is. That's the way we do it. And, there's nothing you can do about it. So what you're saying is if we do something illegal long enough, it becomes okay? That's not the right answer either. All right, Brady, I know you're chomping at the bit. Go ahead and add on.
I was just going to point out it was Barron v. Baltimore was the first time judicial review was approached, and that was in 1794, I think. And then you're right, it was correct. In 1803 was the first time it was actually codified. So I don't know how deep you want to go into this one because we could probably do a whole hour on it. Let's see what Ron's got to say. He's awfully quiet today.
Well, now if you're listening carefully, you hear
I'm listening. I'm listening.
No, I think you're.
I'm multitasking.
I thought you kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah. I saw the judicial review, and I'm like, oh, Doug just got excited.
Well, yes. So
yeah,
really,
I was Babe Ruth with my favorite bat at that moment.
With an Ephus pitch coming in, ready for it.
Well, that was actually one of the very first classes I took with Doug. Was when he went over judicial review, and I had a pretty good understanding of it previously. And after taking his first class, I did about a week worth of homework on it. I go, and now I'm really mad. And no, the way if Congress passes a bill that is unconstitutional, the way that's supposed to happen, and remember that shouldn't happen if the states are being represented by their legislature appointed senators. They're not going to do something that takes away states' rights. That's why the 17th Amendment is such a big deal, because now they don't listen to the people. They don't answer the people. They listen to a national political party.
Right.
But going back to what happens if Congress decides to pass something for, we need a Department of Education. Well, the states are going to say, what they should say is, no, you can't do that. We're not going to support it. We're withdrawing the funding for it. Mm-hmm. They used to get all their money from the states, so they had that power. That's why we have to get rid of the 16th Amendment.
That's actually a core part of Republic Review as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then what happens, and what I would like to see happen, and I think this is what the Founding Fathers meant, if you listen to some of the ratification conventions, this was brought up. What they expected to have happen was, let's say, it's 13 states at the time. Let's say 7 or 8 of them say, wait, this is a little bit too far. How are we going to decide whether that's constitutional or not? Well, let's meet in a convention. And the Founding Fathers expected to have regular conventions. And that was the one tool that they gave the states to override decisions of the federal government. And yet we haven't used it in 240 something years. So, this is a great question. We hit on judicial review, incorporation, 16th Amendment, 17th Amendment, 14th, and now Article 5. So
yeah. And you said that was the one tool. Really, there was 2 tools. The other one would be petition. And if you really start digging into petition the government for redress of grievances, what you realize is that the communities and areas and regions, they would often have these petitions, not something that's where you had to stay within the box for it to be legal. We're talking our own petitions that communities would come forth with. They'd get however many signatures they got and present them to their legislatures, be it their local legislature, their state legislature, or their or Congress. And congressional sessions began not with lawmaking duties, but with going through petitions. They would read them, they would go over them. Now, just because you present a petition doesn't mean that they're for sure going to, oh, wow, and agree. But on the same token, it is the job of the legislature to take into consideration all petitions and discuss them. And so petition has, over the years, disappeared. The abolitionists used petition actually quite a bit. And so in the case, so here's the thing. The tools that have disappeared for the most part have been taken from us. Petition, we just stopped doing it. We let it go. They didn't take it from us. We just stopped using it. And that's something I'd like to get back to. I've got a handful of petitions out right now that I'm doing where, we get our signatures and we present them. And then then someone says, yeah, but they're not going to look at them. They don't care. And that's when we say, okay, fine. We got at least however many thousand people sign this. Is going to say you're out of office then because you're ignoring us and you're ignoring the Constitution. Thank you. Bye. So petition is a huge tool too, and I don't talk about it enough. And I'm trying to make sure I insert it into a lot of things, because that is one of the ways that the people can be active. Voting is a minor part of the process if you really look at it. Keeping a republic is so much more. Petition, conventions, as Warhamster was mentioning, getting to know your legislators or your critters in other offices and being in constant contact with them. I mean, a couple of my California legislators that go up to Sacramento, I'm in touch with. They know me. They know me by name. We text each other. I make sure I'm in touch with these people. I'm even in touch with a city council member from the next city over regularly, because what happens in my city is not just important, but what happens over there is important too, because it's going to creep over to my side. So, and that's a part of keeping the republic. And then, of course, Warhamster in the chat room also put something that I have to give full agreement to. Nullify until it hurts.
Well, yeah, and nullification isn't necessarily rejection of what Congress did. And one of the examples Doug gives that I think is really good is, well, the Air Force was not constitutionally allowed for. It was not provided for, but it kind of makes sense that we need an Air Force. So Congress, what they should have done is drafted up a bill to create an Air Force or an amendment.
Or a proposal, actually.
Yeah, a proposal. And then the states and then the states are going to say, okay, let's talk about it and ratify it. And guess what? Having an Air Force is a pretty good thing.
Well, actually, I'm going to disagree. We didn't need an Air Force.
I've got the Navy jets. I
know. No. we all okay. If you look at the
they're originally Army Air Corps.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at China doesn't have an Air Force. China, it's the same exact thing. It's the Army. It's the air division of the Army, which is exactly what we had.
That's what it was. My grandfather was part of the Army Air Corps in
World War II. U.S. Army Air Corps, USAAC. So I mean, we didn't necessarily need an Air Force.
Now, while I appreciate that, Ron, I don't want to divert from the original point. The point is,
I could have said Coast Guard. If I'd said Coast Guard, it would have been the same thing. But may I point out that China has not won a war in over 550 years?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, but it was that way in Russia, and it was that. Yeah.
Well,
so
the whole point of all this, though, gentlemen and audience, is this: there is a process. Use the process. Don't just let the federal government, just decide to do whatever it wants, even if we should have it. There's a process there for a reason. All I ask is that we go through the process, because the fact is, the states existed before the federal government. The states created the federal government, not the other way around. Therefore, if the federal government needs to add power, it needs to ask its creator, and its creator are the states. And that's why it takes 3/4 of the states to ratify an amendment. Because if the federal government wants a new power, hey, states, can we please? It's a request. That's the same way it was when it came to, before the 16th Amendment, when it came to the budget. The federal government didn't take its money for its budget. It requested it from the states. And we have this situation where we've allowed our federal government to take rather than request and then receive as allowed.
Yeah. And do you guys remember that we were one vote away from the, what was the Budget Act of 1999? Mm-hmm. We could have had a balanced budget act amendment where one vote, or a law was one vote away. Hey, there's another question we missed from Monica earlier on, and it's a good question. It says, constitutionally, what can Pennsylvania citizens do to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court judges for unlawfully changing election laws in 2020? If I may tackle that first, because I've studied that one.
Go ahead.
Not a darn thing besides vote them out.
Yeah.
Not a darn thing. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court is the final arbiter according to Pennsylvania law. You have to vote them out next time around. Now, I mentioned earlier today, right before Doug came on, that Pennsylvania Supreme Court just ruled that, matching signatures, or let me find it real quick. Pennsylvania Supreme Court says that incorrectly or undated mail ballots cannot be counted next week's elections. And someone in chat said the Democrats are already are disagreeing with that, but there's nothing they can do. That's the final word. You can't elevate it to to the Supreme Court or to
Yeah,
an
it's not the
appeals
federal
court.
government's business.
Yeah, it is a state law. The state legislature makes the law, and that's the problem. It's when the Supreme Court overruled the state legislature, they were stepping outside their bounds.
Mhm.
So the only thing you can do is to vote them out.
Right.
And that's the problem with elected judges to some degree. There's a there's a number of states that could switch from a liberal to a conservative court or vice versa next Tuesday. There's about 37 states have elected Supreme Courts, and a lot of them are 4-3 majorities. So those are races very much worth watching next week.
Absolutely.
Because it looks like these challenges are not going away.
If they keep cheating, civil war within the state, says Stephanie. Not necessarily, and civil war is not always the solution. I'm even a firm believer that the war between the states wasn't necessary. That
well, the war between the states wasn't a civil war.
Well, this is true, but that's what people think of when we think of civil war. So, but you'll notice I did change the language there. War between the states.
I just watched some DiLorenzo over the weekend, and he was all over that topic.
Very good.
He's fantastic.
But the thing is, that is the last resort. But what really works is the fact that they think it's on our mind. It's just like the Second Amendment. People say, well, Second Amendment, it means we got to shoot them if they don't do it. Well, the fact that they know we would be willing to do that means that the Second Amendment is working. We don't have to actually get to that point. That's not what it was designed for anyway. Because remember, there's a second part of the Second Amendment when it comes to the militia executing the laws of the Union. But I digress. But when it comes to Pennsylvania, to echo Warhamster's sentiment there, yeah. The state Supreme Court on a state issue, that's as high as it can go court-wise. Now, if we're talking about elections of federal legislatures, then Congress may make a law altering or fixing a rule. But that's the only time any part of the federal government can get involved in elections, is on a federal legislature election. Presidential election, judicial elections, and any state or lower elections, none of the federal government business at all, not even Congress. When I say that Congress may get involved when it comes to Senate or House of Representatives, Article 1, Section 4. So, there you go. Very good questions. Thank you for posing them. And what this tells us, gentlemen? We have a very bright audience coming out with these great questions.
Okay, so I know Darren is big on the Darren is very, very big on the Constitution being or the Corporation of 1871 essentially completely overriding the existing Constitution. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Who had the authority to nullify the Constitution?
Nobody.
Oh, so it didn't happen.
Unless it was by amendment, and if we got that's going on, we got bigger problems. And yeah.
Yeah, and I got another. I had another one of those conversations.
Okay. Hold on, because there's a lot of people who believe this, and I don't want to, because the way you guys have just answered it is very cavalier and
all right.
almost condescending in a way.
What Darren said the first time before that. Then is everyone aware that we are not under the original Constitution? We are. So let's start at that starting point. We are under the original Constitution in the sense that the language of the written Constitution is the same. It hasn't changed. But we're not in the sense that we are under an annotated Constitution that's called case law. So they didn't actually write a new Constitution on parchment. What they did is they've interpreted the existing Constitution to mean things that it doesn't. And my friend Mobley calls that the annotated Constitution by the judicial branch. And so Darren, you're kind of right. Yes, we're not under the original Constitution in the sense that we are following judicial fiat and interpretation and precedent and case law that essentially has told us that the original Constitution, isn't what it is. I actually had a gentleman arguing with me not too long ago who's a big-time Hamiltonian, believes in judicial review and all that, and he says, you know, one of your problems, Doug, is you get too hung up on the original language that was actually printed. Like, yeah, and that's a bad thing, because most of these Hamiltonians will tell you that what happened in the convention and what was written really isn't the Constitution. It's all the redefining and fixing that happened, between 1800 and 1830. All the tweaking, to get it just right, and that led to the judicial review, which led to this annotated judicial interpretation of the Constitution that we deal with now. As for 1871 Organic Act, the 1801 Organic Act also does the same thing. The words corporation are used, but the words corporation, if you look up the 1828 Webster's Dictionary and the context in which it was used in those documents, does not mean that we are some trust as a country. What it meant is that, in the case of Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. became a municipal corporation, which means it became an incorporated city. 1871 became an incorporated city, or at least the area around the district did. And that's what they meant by corporation. As for some of the other things that go along with it, such as the Vatican controls us, I have trouble believing that a dominant Protestant country that couldn't even get its head wrapped around Kennedy being a Catholic would suddenly sell out to. All right, a body politic. First words.
This is the 1828 dictionary. A body politic or corporate formed and authorized by law to act as a single person, a society having the capacity of transacting business as an individual. Corporations are aggregate or sole. Corporations aggregate consists of two or more persons united in a society, which is preserved by a succession of members, either forever or till the corporation is dissolved by the power that formed it, by the death of all its members, by the surrender of its charter or franchises, or by forfeiture. Such corporations are the mayor and aldermen of cities, the head and fellows of a college, the dean and chapter of a cathedral church, the stockholders of a bank or insurance company, etc. A corporation's soul consists of one person only and his successors, as a king or a bishop.
Yeah. Now, what you don't see is a business trust. Now, that is a word the corporation is a word we use for that now. But the idea here is Washington, D.C. is going to be made into this entity that can make its own decisions. It's going to have its own. Because, see, before, you got to remember, Congress had the authority over everything that happened in anything Washington, D.C., including the city area. And what was happening is after 1862, when Washington, D.C. Finally abolished slavery, which is also another fun question. Hey, if the Civil War was about war between the states, about slavery, how come Washington, D.C., the capital of the country, was against slavery, didn't abolish slavery until 1862, over a year after the war started? But I digress. But anyway, so what was happening is escaped slaves, knowing that Washington, D.C. now was a safe zone, were run into that area. It was not supposed to have a population. And so in 1871, they realized, you know what, this population needs to be able to have some type of representation. They need to be able to have some voting power in their community, their city, whatever it may be. So the 10 mile by 10 mile square, called the district, remained a district, but towns of Washington, Georgetown, and other areas around that district were ceded from Virginia and Maryland to the federal government to become the city of Washington, D.C., incorporated municipal corporation as a city so that it may have its own government and tend to its residents as any other city would. The only difference is it's not a part of a state. The land was ceded by the states to the federal government. It is a federal city. Warhamster, you want to take the baton?
Yeah, I've got a screen share. You guys let me know when it comes up.
You shared it and then you took it away.
Okay, well, I couldn't tell that it was there. Which is one of the flaws of not having multiple screens. Okay, you should be able to see it again now.
Yeah, get to the screen that you wanted. There you go.
Yep. Okay, this is a fact check written in January 2021. Did the Act of 1871 establish the United States as a corporation? It says, no, that's not true. And then it goes through and says exactly what Doug just said. It incorporated the city. It made no changes in the nation as a whole and is not the basis for a restoration of Donald Trump's powers. Now, that was written about in the Marshall Report on January 2021, right when Biden is getting inaugurated. And a lot of people, bought into this argument. And it makes some, I get where the argument comes from. I get why people find it to be plausible. Although the Post does not state what the act is referring to, it's clearly talking about the District of Columbia, which is a real piece of legislation. The Post of the Marshall Report was wrong on almost everything else. The actual act is here. It says, be it enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that all that part of the territory of the United States included within the limits of the District of Columbia be, and the same is hereby created into a government by the name of the District of Columbia. Very first sentence of the act specifies that it's talking about D.C. Goes on a little bit further. In 1871, the city was reorganized, and that's what the Organic Act is all about. The city was only incorporated in the sense that it became a single entity. Where it gets interesting is apparently it's been reorganized since. And so the Organic Act of 1871 is no longer even valid. The other part of that theory that you hear quite a bit is that the United States went bankrupt in 1933. Okay, so that didn't happen, and I can pull up the actual charts, the Treasury statistics from the time. But you got to remember, after World War I, Europe got decimated by the war. The United States was financing the rebuilding of Europe, not the other way around. We had the Great Depression going on, but we were far from bankrupt.
Right.
Europe is the ones who were broke, and that was also the case after World War II, which is one of the many reasons the United States became the dominant economic power on the planet. But so there's a lot of fallacies there. But
by way of creating debt through the Federal Reserve.
Well, yeah, that's that too, but that's a totally different conversation. But I'm in 100% agreement with you on that one, Ron, as you well know. The thing about this 1871 corporation is where it leads a lot of people, and that's into some of these sovereign citizen movements, which we saw on display. As Darrell Brooks tried to defend himself in the Waukesha murders, where basically you no longer there's a group of charlatans out there selling $3,000 a weekend seminars to get people to come learn how to be a sovereign citizen and represent yourself in court, and your legal name and your birth certificate can be sold. All these theories are pretty much bunk. There's actually no evidence for them whatsoever. Mm-hmm. When people start believing all of those things, are they spending their time active in their local communities? Are they spending their time petitioning their government? Are they spending their time running for? No, they're sitting around studying other things that may seem like they make a ton of sense, but it's not. It's actually distracting from what we the people should be doing.
Let me say something here, because I am one that used to believe in the United States was a corporation theory. Okay, I used to believe that, just like I used to believe that the Second Amendment applied to state government. So, when I learned and I grew in my understanding, I realized that I didn't necessarily about the state government thing, or the federal government being a corporation. I realized that the 1871 thing wasn't what was said. However, I'm going to slightly disagree with you on the sovereign citizen thing and your birth certificates being sold and whatnot. I don't understand that entire mechanism, but I think there's something there. As they say, where there's smoke, there's fire. Now, while I may not actually I may not see fire, I do see a little bit of smoke. But that, again, that could just be because I have a lack of understanding of it. But I know some pretty smart people who are really, really into that. But again, I don't agree at this point in time. while I used to, I don't agree that the corporation of 1871 governs the United States. I don't agree with that.
Allow me to retort.
Okay, yeah, please. This
No,
is a productive discussion.
Absolutely. So if there was a trading market for birth certificates, it would have a CUSIP numbers, which they say on the back of that. Every single CUSIP number is registered with different financial authorities, and I've spent most of the last 22 years with a Bloomberg terminal on my desk, and I have yet to see a birth certificate trade. If it was possible, if it existed, I would have seen it. I've also looked at some of those websites where people say you can type in your social security number and it tells you how much you're worth. Those have been, you can find those debunked everywhere. I don't need to spend any time on that one. That just does not happen. That's a myth. It's one of great internet fables of all time. As far as you mentioned, a sovereign citizen, well, the whole idea of being a sovereign citizen speaks to my libertarian heart. So I tell people to be very cautious about it, because an awful lot of the people who have tried to exercise that when it comes to either taxes or other issues in court have ended up in jail. And the people who sold them those ideas got to keep their $3,000 deposit. It is not a wise direction to go on a sovereign citizen. I could be 100% in agreement with what they're saying in spirit. That is not the accepted law of the land of the United States, and I don't want to see people go to jail unnecessarily. There's other ways to fight the system.
A couple of things also. Darren brings up David Straight, says he explains it best. I have some friends who are connected or in contact with David Straight, and I have put out there that I'm willing to debate him about this. I have not gotten a response yet. As for one other thing that's usually connected to this, one of the stories that's usually connected with all of this is that part of the reason we were bankrupt, or part of the reason why we sold ourselves to Europe, is because we had never been able to pay back our Revolutionary War debt. Some of you may have heard that. That is not true, and that's real easy to debunk. We paid off all of our debt in 1835 under Andrew Jackson. There was no national debt for an entire 2 months. Granted, it was only 2 months, but we were at zero. The war debt had been already paid by then. So this idea that the American Revolution war debt still existed beyond 1835 is also not accurate. And Kikyo, exactly, conspiracy factualist. There you go, brother.
Well, let's talk about it.
We can't talk about that here.
Yep, we can't. That's probably a no topic.
Yeah, well, we
I don't know who asked that question. I don't know who asked that question, but yeah, we can't discuss that topic of here. We just can't.
Not on YouTube. Nope.
Not on YouTube. You get.
Yeah, regarding Dave Straight, I'll have to find this one, but I think it was Jordan Sather did a pretty well done takedown on some of the other theories that David Straight has been spouting off or espousing. And yeah, when he's doing shows and people are talking about the Galactic Federation, I have the tendency to think his credibility is a little bit off.
Yeah.
I don't go that direction.
Okay, so just because we don't agree on certain things, I don't agree with people who are flat earthers. Okay, and I want to caution us all to, there are a lot of thoughts that we have that people look at us and laugh at. My cousin was he started posting stuff on Facebook and about being flat Earth stuff, and I didn't, I'm obviously not a flat earther, and I questioned him about it, and I said, hey, so we need to have lunch or whatever. So anyway, I went over and I had lunch, and I kind of let him talk about a bunch of stuff, and because I wanted to hear what he had to say, right? And he thanked me after the fact because he said, you're the only person that didn't laugh at me or that didn't ridicule me. And there are a lot of people out there who are they're fairly intelligent people who, they hold to beliefs that we probably don't necessarily agree with. And I would like to caution us to not laugh at people and laugh at ideas even though we think they're ridiculous, because we don't know. We think we know, but just because it's beyond what we know, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're right.
Okay, so there's some truth to what you're saying there, but I'm coming up from a different standpoint. When a guy like David Strait, who's influential on a lot of people, is putting a lot of challenging theories out there, and some of them that are based on absolutely zero evidence. Period. You have to question his credit. You have to question his credibility. And I personally,
and it's also taken away our force.
Let me finish.
What we do.
Let me finish, Ron.
No. Let me interject something because
I'm going to finish my statement, Ron. I think it does damage to this movement of taking our country back when you take people's eyes off the ball for stuff that you cannot objectively prove.
Agree. I'm not disagreeing with that, and in fact, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how we react to the information.
Yeah, show me the evidence.
No, that's not what I'm saying. When we react to it in a mocking, like if we laugh at it, like "ah ha ha, you're fucking stupid," what we do is we shouldn't do that. That's the point I'm trying to make. We shouldn't just laugh it off like they're dumb.
Well, nobody is.
Well,
when I'm confronted with these ideas, and you and I have had these conversations millions of times, I go, okay, is it plausible?
But
I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, okay, show me your objective evidence.
And that's fine. That's fine. And I'm not trying to be contentious with you guys. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm basically making this statement to everybody. This isn't just. I mean, because I get guilty. I'm guilty of it too. I'm guilty of laughing at stuff too. But we shouldn't laugh in this world. In this day and age where we are right now, I believe that we should all treat everybody with a certain level of respect. We can agreeably disagree, but let's handle the disagreement in a manner that is not in with mockery. I guess that's maybe the best way to say it. So
I don't think anybody's.
If someone laughs, that does not necessarily mean it's mockery. It's like it's so shocking they couldn't help but react. And my first response to that is, really, grow a spine.
Yeah, we've got influencers out there right now talking about how they're in direct communication with the Galactic Federation, who's working with the White Hats.
I will laugh out loud at that.
Yeah, I'm look, even theories that are a little bit less way out there than that one. My response is always the same. I consider whether it's plausible enough, and then I say, may I see your objective evidence? And when they don't have it, or they do, if they don't have any evidence whatsoever, I go, okay, that is pure conjecture. What are you basing it on? And I listen to their arguments, and I can decide whether I want to completely dismiss it or not. And that's how you handle the unknown.
And I'm not, guys. I'm not trying to get caught up on flat Earth in the comment section. I'm not trying to get caught up on flat Earth or saying that I'm holding a position one way or the other. I hold to the position that the Earth is round, but I was just simply making the statement because I've had experience with my cousin who started talking about flat Earth stuff, and I didn't just laugh him off. I listened to what he had to say, and then I disagreed with him, but I still treated him with a certain level of respect, and he was appreciative of that. And as a result of that, I am now able to have even more further dialogue with him. We can agreeably disagree, but we can exchange ideas, and he can expand my mind, and I can expand his, and we don't fear mocking each other. I guess that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make, because
you made the point. You made that point well, and I think everyone's in agreement about that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is a totally different concept. When we have people out there making a living and taking advantage of people with stuff that they have no objective evidence of, I kind of have a tendency to not like these people as much as I ought to. But I'm reading the comments, and I will go out of my way this week to read up or watch some David Strait videos on the state national, American national. I'll be prepared to address that directly next week, because it's this is a guy who's got enough influence. I'm going to listen to his opinions, and if they're plausible, in my opinion, I'll say that. And if I think there's stuff that needs to be addressed, I'm more than happy to do that.
Let me insert something here before I got to go here. Warhamster, when it comes to American national versus state national, I'm not a fan of the word national, but that's beside the point. What the idea of state national represents is what existed under the Articles of Confederation. When the Constitution was written, what a state national is stopped existing. We became a not a firm union, but a firmer union than it was. It's still a voluntary union, but before it was a confederacy, and your state citizenship was pretty much the main and only. Now that said, because of the way our system is set up, people still felt that they were their state first, and in some of the states they did actually have still state citizenship at the time of the Constitution. That eventually did wear away or wear off. But the idea of state national over American national, that kind of changed at the time of the writing of the Constitution. That said, your state being a part of this union, of this country, makes you a citizen of this country. And citizen is not a bad word. Citizen means that your government's supposed to serve you. It's the bad word is subject, which is you're supposed to serve your system. So please don't attribute the definition of subject to citizen.
Let me. I know you got to go here in a few minutes, Doug. So let's just cut it off here. But what I'd like to propose, with everything that's coming up with the election, with because the election's a week from today, with the likelihood that we're going to be seeing quite a bit of chaos as a result of the election over the course of probably the next month or two, or maybe longer, I would like to propose that we continue the general Q&A for at least another couple weeks until, because I think there's going to be a lot of constitutional questions that are arising, and I don't want to get stuck. I don't want to get stuck into a class mode, especially since we have the time. So I'd like to propose that we do that, and because I think we might even be able to get a lot more people to come in and join us for this in preparation for diving back into the Constitution.
I think that's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea. I want to stick with that. One last word. Devil Dog says KrisAnne Hall has an article on American National. Devil Dog, I would like to see that. I'm a fan of KrisAnne Hall. I met her. We know each other. We're not like buddy, but we're close enough that we know of each other and converse every once in a while. I am curious about that article, so if you could forward that link sometime, maybe next week, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, usually when I hear the American national argument, it stems from a different interpretation of what natural rights are, and it's a conversation worth having. It's a topic worth going into. So sure. I'm glad they brought it up.
Okay. Well, I think everybody, at least the several people in the chat have like that idea
and
as
I'm
well.
enjoying watching the comments. It's like Pat. He says, "Hey, our country's not a national unit; it's a federal unit." Exactly. We don't have a national government; we have a federal government. So very good point, Pat. And McClanahan. The more and more I'm getting to learn about McClanahan, the more and more I'm starting to realize he and I need to sit down and have dinner together.
No, I would love. Brady, have you tried to get a hold of him?
Brady,
Warhamster, hello.
Oh, sorry about that. I had to grab the phone real quick. It's my business partner.
Have you tried to get a hold of McClanahan?
We have traded emails once.
Okay. I would love to see if we could even, if we could get him on at least one time, just the four of us and chit chat. I know that we probably don't have nearly the audience that he has or that he would probably like, but I think that we would, if you want to give me and his email address and let me reach out to him, or if you want to try.
Yeah, let me run with it. I need to follow up with him on some stuff that he responded with, so I'll just add that into my response. I'm going to be taking a couple of his paid classes here coming up, so I will get the opportunity to get to know him a little bit. So maybe I can work that. Maybe I can work that into the conversation.
Awesome.
Because he is fantastic.
Oh, he's stellar. Do you remember how I stumbled onto him? Because I was looking for the comparisons between the American Constitution and the Confederate Constitution.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that. In fact, there's a website he writes for or he does his videos for on every Friday. It's called the Abbeville Institute.
Mm-hmm.
Really fascinating, good constitutional stuff. That one article I sent to Doug. I sent Doug an article last week. I swear to God, I could have written this one. Yeah, Abbeville Institute is great, and they're McClanahan's affiliated with them.
Yes, well, so is De Lorenzo, and that's Don Livingston is the Abbeville Institute head guy, and He's done quite a few discussions on YouTube. You can go to their YouTube channel. He's got an enormous amount of content where talking about southern stuff. By the way, totally unrelated. If you humor me for just a second because I want to read this to you. This is awesome. Hold on. I'm going to get. Okay, so it's a book called. Have you heard of the book called The Guns of the South?
The Guns of the South.
The Guns of the South. Okay, so
Not sure I'm familiar.
It's the master of alternate history depicts the ultimate reversal. The South wins the Civil War. The Guns of the South. Let's see here. Where's the description? I got to get to the description because it's amazing. From the back cover, with the power and assurance of the master storyteller and the scrupulous accuracy of trained historian Harry Turtledove has created an immense, meticulously detailed, and utterly plausible world in which history takes the most unexpected turn. In The Guns of the South, Turtledove takes us one of the most dramatic, bloody, and tumultuous episodes in our life as a nation in the Civil War, and vividly imagines what might have been had the rebels prevailed. In the usual winter cold of 1864, Robert E. Lee finds himself and his army of Northern Virginia huddled on the banks of the Rapidan, trying to fight a war despite meager rations and a terrible lack of equipment. Indeed, some of his men do not even have shoes, but when Lee finds a way to arm his forces, the tide suddenly turns. The rebels win a decisive victory at the Battle of the Wilderness. Lee presumes his advantage. It doesn't say exactly what it is, but the longest.
Isn't he known for alternative history stuff?
Yeah, exactly. The point is that what happens is somebody goes back in time and gives the South the AK-47, and then they fight the remainder of the Civil War with the AK-47, and decimate the Union.
Interesting. Now, I want to say one last thing before I go. Brian McClanahan, when you guys first started talking about him, I'm like, oh, I never heard of the guy. Then going through my books, I come across a book I've had at least 10 years. It was published in 2009. Brian McClanahan.
Nice.
Founding Fathers, the politically incorrect guide to the Founding Fathers. I've had this book for at least 10 years. So I did know of Brian McClanahan. I just didn't know I knew of him.
Right. That's awesome. All right, guys. Well, we'll let Doug. We'll let you get to your drive across the Ortega.
Yes.
And we'll see y'all next week on Election Day. It's going to be interesting.
Election Day episode. I have a feeling a lot of the questions are going to be about elections.
Yeah. Well, we by the time that we do the episode, we probably won't have many answers, but we'll have a lot of
which means the following episode will really be fun.
Exactly correct. So. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in today. And sorry I've been gone the last couple of weeks. Just had some business stuff to take care of, but I can't foresee myself being gone again for a while.
Unless
so
he gets abducted by aliens or something. But
yes.
Aside from that, yeah.
Hey, they take me to the Galactic Federation headquarters.
If you come back with proof of that, Ron, I'll welcome you back.
All right.
All right,
guys
and gentlemen. United we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys. See you later.